All right, we are all a go. We're going to begin our service on page 126, and again, I invite everyone to participate as you're comfortable. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to help work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. We'll continue with these words from the book of Psalms. How good it is for all of us to be together. Continue on page 130 as we join together in words from Psalm 95 and 96, and giving thanks to God for the beauty and the gift of creation.
Yeah.
We'll continue welcoming Shabbat, joining together in a medieval poem, Lecha Dodi, which talks about God and Shabbat, Shabbat coming, being like the coming of a bride or a queen. So we're going to join together on page 138. We'll join in verses 1, 2, 5, and 9 if you're looking at the prayer book. And you can see all the verses we'll be doing on the screen. As we reach the final verse, we're going to join in rising together and face the entryway to welcome Shabbat like a bride. Ya la 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 Fadodi, ya la 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 Elikatala, ya la 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 Shabbat, B'nei Shabbat Nekabela, Damor V'Chol. I didn't miss any of Laurel's part, that's okay. We are going to continue with our songs of welcome as we join together on page 142, welcoming the Shabbat angels of peace. Shabbat in our tradition is a day of rest, and as much as Jews are supposed to keep Shabbat, there is a tradition that acknowledges that Shabbat, that this ability to take a day out of our busy schedules to rest, is actually what has allowed the Jewish people to survive all of these many years. So we welcome the angels of peace to join us and hopefully to give us that sense of restfulness and peace that I know I certainly can use after this week. So we'll join together. Page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharim, Malachei Elyon, Nimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Olechem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Baruch Hu. And I will invite Stephanie, Morrill, and Savannah to join me on the bima as we are getting ready to kindle the Shabbat lights. Amen. Thank you. We are going to continue on page 144 as we transition into the middle section of our service, the Shema, her blessings. Page 144 with the Chatz Kaddish.
Yikra v'kadash shemei Rabbah, v'yaman v'rachete v'yamlik malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayechon Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Uvizman kari, ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach, ve'alam u'al me'amaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach ve'yishtabach, Yitbar v'yitrama v'yitnaseh, Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitala, shmei kedusha rehu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, be'imeru, amen. Please
Please rise as we turn to page 146.
Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Oreyon, Balayla, Golelor mibne Choshech, Golelor mibne Choshech, Choshech mibne Or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Boreon, Balayla, Golelor mibne Choshech, Golelor mibne Choshech, Bechoshech mibne Or.
Please turn to page 150. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Please rise for the Shema, and we'll continue on page 142, or 52, sorry.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
Please be seated, and we will continue on page 154. Ve'ahavta ata Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha u'b'chol maadecha v'hayu hadavarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzvavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatan levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech u'shotbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu lototafot b'neinecha u'tatam al mezuzot beitecha u'b'sharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Please turn to page 157. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai. There is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be at one and at peace. Then we shall rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. We will continue on page 158. We'll continue on page 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, HaPoresh Shirah Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. We will continue on page 162.
ושמרו בני ישראל השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וששת עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We rise together for Lent of Philo, beginning on page 164 and then continuing on even pages.
Adonai sefataitika ufiaki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, let my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ha'anova, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Hasei Avot L'imahot, U'mevii Geulah Livnei Bneihem, Amar Shemo Ve'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh Hakol Atarav Ve'Moshiach, Mechakel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayeh Hakol B'Rachamim Rabim. Tomech noplim verofet olim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar. Nichamocha ba'al gefurot, umito melach, melech me'it umechayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua. Nama atah l'hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim v'chol yom yehallelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Please be seated. There's a tradition that you don't really clap in Judaism, but when someone does a good job, we use sign language to do this. We'll continue on page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. And on the bottom of page 175, you are with us in our prayer, our love and our doubt, and our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'odcha levadcha be'yira na'avod. On the top of page 177, we have a prayer of thanksgiving. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul all light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lecha na'el lehodot. We'll continue with a prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, on page 178. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Hasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Hasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon, lecho hashalom. Ki atahu Shalom, Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Hasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Hasim Leolam. V'tov de'einecha levarech et zamcha Yisrael, b'chol Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Hasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Hasim Leolam. Hasim Leolam. Hasim Leolam. We'll continue with a moment for our own quiet thoughts and prayers. Yehu leratzon imrei fi behegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai Imrei fi libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, begoali, begoali. We devote the next few moments of our service to hold in our hearts and our prayers those of our family members, our loved ones, our friends who are in need of a prayer of healing. As we prepare to say this prayer, if there are those of you on Zoom who have someone in mind that you'd like to share their name in the chat, I'll read their names in a moment. If there are those of you in the sanctuary who have a name that you'd like to share, someone who's in need of a prayer of healing, as I look your way, please feel free to share their names. Roz Gibel, Esther Greenwald, Lauren Trichek, Ed Farr, Danny Haynes, Bruce Cohen, Gail Barron, Dr. Jay Katzum, Heather Cohen, Patrick Adamson, Joe Marks. And for all of our loved ones and our friends and family members who are in need of a prayer of healing, we say, Baruch atah Adonai rofeh hacholim. Blessed is God who brings healing to the sick. I'm going to invite Laurel back up to join me in singing Sheberach. Shabbat shalom, everyone. All right. You all should be able to see a picture on the screen, whether you're in the sanctuary or at home. And I think most people, based on history books, should recognize what this picture is. This picture comes from the March on Montgomery, from Selma to Montgomery, that took place in March of 1965. And And there are all sorts of really fascinating pieces from a historical perspective about this photo and what's going on here. But there's also a lot of pieces of history tied to this photo that people don't realize or maybe didn't learn in history class. So I want to mention a couple of things that I think are interesting and tie this to a question that actually Savannah asked me yesterday, which kind of prompted me to think about this for what I wanted to say to everybody. And it also, I think, ties to the Torah portion a little bit also, and I'll kind of explain that in a minute. So I circled two people in this picture. The first person is probably the more well-known figure in the picture. The person whose head is surrounded by a green line, that's Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. And Rabbi Heschel and Dr. King met each other at a conference about race and religion at Stanford University in 1963, so 2 years before this event. And really from that moment, Heschel gave the opening lecture of this conference on race and religion, and he and Dr. King became very good friends to the point where Dr. King called Rabbi Heschel his rabbi. So I think that's kind of a cool note. The person whose face is circled in red, his name is Rabbi Maurice Davis, and he is the lesser known of these two individuals, but he was actually chosen to be the representative of the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, which happens to be the umbrella organization of the same umbrella organization that this temple belongs to. It's now called the Union for Reform Judaism. So I'm going to tell you a funny story. It's kind of a funny story, but it's actually, I think, very meaningful in a moment. But what I wanted to also do is mention that this was not, when they marched on March 25th, I believe, 26th. No, it was the 25th. When they marched on March 25th from Selma, or began the march from Selma to Montgomery, that was not the first time they tried. It was actually the third time. There were two other what are considered failed attempts that were broken up by the police, attempts that were really crushed. But even before that, the events that actually prompted the need to have a march, specifically that prompted the organization of this march, happened on February 18th in 1965, which happens to be 57 years ago today, when segregationists, a group of white segregationists, attacked a group of peaceful protesters who were demonstrating for voting rights in the town of Marion, Alabama, and it was a terribly chaotic scene, and one of the protesters, Jimmy Lee Jackson, was shot and killed, and his death is what ultimately led to Dr. King and the SCLC to planning this protest. And it took them, and the first scheduled date was March 7th, and I think most people, if you know your history, know that as Bloody Sunday. That was the first attempt that failed miserably because the people who were planning on marching were attacked and brutalized by the police in Montgomery, or in Selma, excuse me. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this, one, because that moment in history, we are on the anniversary of that terrible moment in history, and I think telling the truth in our history is fundamentally important. And there also is a question that we can ask from this week's Torah portion, which is, what does it mean to stand at Mount Sinai? So I'm going to kind of explain how I got to that question from telling you this story. In Jewish tradition, the question of what is Sinai is actually a very important question, and one that doesn't really have a very good answer. Mount Sinai is the place in the Torah, in this week's Torah portion, where the Jewish people are standing around the mountain and they receive the Ten Commandments, and depending on which part of rabbinic tradition you believe, they also received all of the other commandments of our tradition while standing at Mount Sinai. So why is that a hard question? What is Sinai? Well, if you're being pretty literal about it, the Torah tells us it's this particular place, but there's a problem with that idea, and that is there are other places in the Torah that tell the exact same story, and Mount Sinai is not mentioned. In fact, there is another name in the Hebrew Bible called Mount Horeb, and some people say that it was Mount Horeb where we got all of these things, and the question of why there's a different name becomes an issue. The other kind of more practical issue is we have no idea where Mount Sinai is. There's a Christian organization who has a monastery in the middle of the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt today that believes that they know where Mount Sinai is, but nobody else really believes that's where Mount Sinai is. And so we have this fundamental question of where is Sinai? To answer the complicated question, actually, Jewish tradition created an answer. And actually, the answer to where is Sinai, we partially demonstrated the answer this evening. The section of our service that's called the Shema and her blessings is actually meant to mirror the experience of receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai, but it takes on a really interesting and almost opposite order of the events that happen in the Torah. So in the Torah, as soon as the people of Israel are leaving Egypt, as they're marching out of Egypt, the first moment of redemption of the story, the moment where they reach freedom, happens, do you know when? When they cross the sea. And there's a moment that we sang in our services tonight when we sang Micha Mocha Ba'ilim Adonai, where the people, after they get to the other side of the sea, they're celebrating, they're singing, and they're dancing together. And there are other hard questions about that I won't go into right now, but that is considered to be like this peak moment of redemption, and what follows is the receiving of the law of the Torah at Mount Sinai. When the rabbis created the service that we do, they wanted to make it so that the way we live our lives is seen as such that redemption is not yet here. And so we receive the Torah by saying the Shema, which you can all see again as the centerpiece of our sanctuary. We say the Shema as a declaration of our faith, but we don't sing the song of redemption first. We sing the song of redemption further on in the service as kind of an acknowledgement that we haven't yet gotten there yet. One of the things about this particular picture, this march from Selma to Montgomery, that I think is really important is that it was very inspirational, but it didn't solve the problem. It was a really important moment in history, but it was not a moment of redemption. It was a moment that hopefully would inspire future generations towards continuing to pursue that kind of redemption for all people, but it wasn't really that. So the question of where is Sinai? The question of where is Sinai in Jewish tradition is where people join together to hear the cry of others and to seek out that kind of redemption for people. So here's the funny part of the story. So at the first two attempts on the march, there actually was a very small Jewish turnout. There were about 1,000 Jewish people who showed up to the third attempt at the march. And also was the moment when a significant group of other white identifying people showed up, and there are some people who say that that was the reason why they were allowed to ultimately do it, because there was a larger non-black population participating, and the idea that people of all backgrounds needed to come together in order for this historic and important moment to happen is interesting. But one of the particular details that I think is amusing, interesting, and also personally meaningful as a Jewish community leader is that the Jewish clergy people who were in attendance of this march wanted to identify themselves as clergy people, but they wanted to differentiate themselves from the Catholics and the other people who were wearing clergy collars. Once upon a time in Germany, there were Reformed Jewish rabbis who wore clergy collars in the exact same way as you would see other ministers do today, but the Reform movement stopped doing that in the late 1800s. And in the 60s, most Reform rabbis didn't wear a kippah. I'm wearing a kippah now, I'm wearing a talit now, but that would have been highly unusual for a Reform rabbi in the 1960s. But they wanted to show their presence of being Jewish in this moment, and so they actually brought with them about 1,000 kippot, 1,000 yarmulkes, to give to any Jewish person who wanted it. So what happened? There was a moment when one of the African-American marchers came to one of the rabbis and asked what the significance of wearing a kippah or a yarmulke is. And one of the rabbis said that the reason they had brought them was because clergy of every denomination were wearing these clerical collars, that the rabbis wanted to wear yarmulkes. Rabbi Davis, who was, again, representing the union, at the time, the Union for American Hebrew Congregations, arrived kind of late to the scene and realized that there were no yarmulkes left to be had. And so he asked where they all went, and he said that, that one of the marchers asked and received the answer that a person's head should be covered whenever they're in the presence of God. And the marcher who had asked the question responded that wherever the freedom movement is, that's where God lives. So the question again of where is Sinai, where is this place where we receive the law, where we found our tradition, that place is moving. It's not a set place that you can go and find in the wilderness in Egypt. That place is, again, wherever we gather together in moments of prayer. Like I mentioned this evening, we base our service on the idea that we find Sinai in these moments of learning Torah. But more importantly, in Jewish tradition, we find Sinai in walking together as a community and working towards justice and fairness for all people. And in important moments like this in history where we work together, that's how we create community. That's how we create a world where God will hopefully dwell with us. And so it's my hope that the memory of this event and our own hope for redemption of the world and for freedom of all people is something that continues to propel us in the work that we do to make our own communities better. And with that, I will wish you a Shabbat Shalom. We are going to continue with Aleinu on page 586, and I'll invite everyone to please rise.
ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם דרכנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Please be seated. We'll continue on page 591. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Love each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. At this time in our service, we hold in our hearts our loved ones who have come before us as we acknowledge the yahrzeit, the anniversary of the passing of the following people, those for whom this Shabbat is a yahrzeit and this week: Irving Hecht, Richard Shatton, Albert A. Abelson, Fanny Jenkins Zaglin, Larry Hyman, Jean Morse, Harold Giblin, Harry Meister, Hilda Kunis Rovner, Werner Don, Rebecca Rosenfeld, Joseph Sugarman, David S. Fishman, Stanley Rader, Benjamin Taft, S.D. Timbers, Louis Galoob, Bernard Rayner, and Ann Rose. If there are loved ones, if there are loved ones you'd like to share their name on your own Zoom and you'd like to put their name in the chat, I'll read them in a moment. And if there are people in the sanctuary you'd like to acknowledge, yes, please. Michael Clayton, Gail Rose Carmack, for all of our loved ones we hold in our hearts in loving memory, we say, Zichrona Livracha, may their memories always be a blessing. We'll turn to page 598 as we rise together for the Mourner's Kaddish. יתקדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא תברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה בריחו. לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, אמירון בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו amen. May the one who creates peace in the heavens on high bring peace to us here on earth, to the people of Israel and all people of the world, and may God send comfort to all those who are mourning. Together we say, amen. Please be seated. We have a few temple announcements. The first is, not on the screen, the first is, it's so lovely to hear you all singing this evening. It's been a while since on a Friday evening we've had so many people and I could hear your voices. It was lovely. And so we're going to continue this celebration of Laurel tomorrow at 4:30. And I hope that you bring the same, your singing voices then too, because you sound wonderful. The next announcement is that our very own kitchen maven, Barbara Berger, is going to share some recipes and cooking techniques of making knishes and an easy apple cake on Sunday, February 27th at 3 p.m. It is going to be a Zoom event, so we have the opportunity to all be in our own kitchen spaces. And if you RSVP to either Joe Thompson or Sarah Miller, they will send you the recipes. And we'll also have the Zoom link for this event posted in next week's e-news. So if you're interested, keep your eyes open for that and the email in e-news for this coming Wednesday. Our next book club meeting is going to be on March 1st at 7:30 p.m. also on Zoom. We'll be reading the novel called On Division by Goldie Goldblum. And if you are interested in joining us, even if you don't finish reading the book, or even if you don't start reading the book, our conversations are always really interesting, and you're welcome to join. We have a description of the book in our e-news, and yeah, I hope you'll join. We have a blood drive here on March 6th from 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. It'll be in the parking lot. The Blood Connection sets up shop outside. You do need to register for an appointment. And again, we have this QR code in our e-news that you can register for there. Anyone who donates blood, the Blood Connection will actually make a $20 charitable donation to the temple. So it is a kind of minor fundraiser for us also, but the more important piece of this is that we can help save lives in the community by giving blood. So if you are able and can do that, that would be awesome. And then a couple months out, in May, I had the chance to meet, I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm going to tell you what this is. I had the chance to meet a number of the producers of an organization called Violins of Hope. There were a father and son violin restoration duo in Bulgaria who collected violins that were confiscated by the Nazis in the Holocaust, and they fully restored them and beautified them, made them into amazing instruments. And these violins travel around the world and are played by local orchestras and other musicians. And they're accompanied by a dance troupe. And we have the incredible opportunity of having this organization of Violins of Hope come to Greenville at the Peace Center. And it's on May 4th at 7:30 p.m. And the ticket costs are between $35 and $75. I know that it took an incredible amount of work by a lot of different people in the community to make this happen. So it would be really cool if we could sell that event out. So if you're interested, I think there's more information in our e-news, or you can go to the Peace Center's website and find tickets there. That is all I have. So I'm going to invite Laurel back up one more time as we say Kiddush and Motzi and conclude our service. So come on up. I didn't tell her she was doing this, so she doesn't actually have to say anything. But we're going to join together in saying Kiddush, and if you have something to say Kiddush with at home, now's the time to get it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. L'chaim, everyone. It's just juice. You can go sit back down if you want. Because, and the reason I say, you could stay up here if you want, but so on the eve of becoming bar mitzvah is really traditionally the last time your parents would say these words of blessing for you as a child. You can always say them for her because she's your child, but as a child, this is the last chance you get to say these words of blessing. So we're going to say the blessing for our children, for all of our kids, whether we're sitting next to them or if we're holding them in our hearts or we can see them on Zoom. These words of blessing are for them. Yesimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe. May you be blessed like the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Menashe. Yesimech Elohim ke'Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah. May you be blessed like the mothers of our people, like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We wish for all of our children that they be proud of who they are and that they always strive to be the best version of themselves. And we hope these words of blessing are always with them. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine on you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence always be with you, and may you always be blessed with the most important gifts of wholeness and peace. And we say together, Amen. And we don't have the challah in here, but we'll say motzi anyway, because I am going to go home and eat dinner. So we'll say the blessing together, and I think there is a challah somewhere. So, okay, so we'll get challah after. But we'll say motzi now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. We are going to conclude our service singing a prayer for peace, Oseh Shalom, and then I'll invite everyone who's on Zoom to unmute, and we can all greet each other and congratulate Laurel on the first step of this journey. But first, let's say shalom. Oh, say shalom, bimroma, Hallelujah, say shalom, Aleinu, Ve'alko Yisrael, Ve'imeru Amen. Oh, say shalom, bimroma, Hallelujah, say shalom, Aleinu, Ve'alko Yisrael, Ve'imeru Amen. Oh, say shalom, bimroma, Hallelujah, say shalom, Aleinu, Ve'alko Yisrael, Ve'imeru Amen. Oh, say shalom, bimroma, Hallelujah, say shalom, Aleinu, Ve'alko Yisrael, Ve'imeru Amen. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. May you all find peace and joy and gladness in this day. Again, congratulations to Laurel on the first step of your journey. I can't wait for tomorrow. Shabbat Shalom.